Welcome to CMMSradio, a podcast, blog site, and general resource for all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey. We'll bring in experts along the way to help us learn more about CMMS, facilities operations, and much more. If you need help with the CMMS project, send a message at CMMSradio.com using the What's on Your Mind link. Suggest a topic, share your CMMS story, or ask questions. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Today we have Nick Haase. He is co-founder and he is in charge of go-to-market strategy for MaintainX. And he also happens to be a subject matter expert in emerging CMMS technologies. And I just want to start out with saying thank you for joining us, Nick. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Greg. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'm excited for our conversation. I know we've had previous conversation. I want to give everybody some general background. So MaintainX is a CMMS platform originally built for manufacturing, although it does in fact fit into many other segments. And from a purposeful perspective, if you can even say that, it was really designed to eliminate paper and clipboards for that set of workers that are there, not sitting in front of computers. So Nick, you and I had a discussion about this, and it was really around the MaintainX origin story, the journey. And I'd like to kind of start right there and ask you, how did this get started, and what was the main problem that you eventually solved with your co-founders?
Yeah, absolutely. The long and short of it was, my co-founders and I had some experience building software for B2C, folks, and then ultimately, got our hands dirty in the B2B world, building software for businesses. And so we started from this world where it was around making sure that the product was really easy for anyone to use. That was sort of our first principle. If you're building anything, it should be easy for those end users to be able to get whatever it is that product or service's value is, get to that quickest and make it easy for anyone to pick up and use. Fast forward, we started to look into this market, and we found something that was really, really kind of striking. And this CMMS space, when we launched the company, there were hundreds of competitors in the market. This was not a new concept. What was sort of really stood out to us was that most of the products, almost all of them, were designed almost exclusively for desktop, and which is great. A desktop product has a lot of real estate on the screen that you can plug in all these features and functionalities. And historically, B2B software hasn't been particularly great to look at or use, but that's more of the status quo that exists across a lot of industries. But what was really unique about the CMMS space and this area we really started to dig deeper on was that the people who needed to complete the work and the workflows that came out of the software were for people who don't sit behind a desk all day. It's that deskless frontline workforce. Most of them, are out in the field, and not necessarily the proverbial grass fields, but they're out in the factory. They're out away from their desk working on some piece of equipment, whether it's a preventive maintenance routine, whether it's reactive maintenance, whether it's just inspection or some sort of safety checklist that they're going through. Those can't be performed by just looking out from your desk over the keyboard and completing those tasks. So what actually ends up happening is these people who are technically using software end up printing out their work orders, and then they're taking this big stack of papers with them on a clipboard and going about their day. And if there's any sort of collaboration that needs to happen, whether it's, hey, there's something more, there's a fire I need you to help put out over here. That stuff takes place over radio, walkie-talkies. They communicate that way. And there's really not a lot of transparency across those day-to-day operations at the site level, let alone, if you go up to a regional level and you want to know, what's happening, it's kind of a jump ball as to anybody's guess as to what's, where anybody is at any moment in time. So that begged the question, well, why? why is that the case? And so we started we started calling some of these folks, asking them about their experience with these software tools. And, some of them did say, yeah, there's a mobile app that came out with this tool, but it was, damn near impossible to use. It was like an airplane cockpit of buttons. I couldn't teach my guys to use it. We ended up throwing it back and just going back to the paper system. So there have been moments where people have tried to kind of have that digital transformation, moment within these vertical. And so we started digging into some of those products, and we realized that, yeah, they were really hard to use. And so basically this, the whole thesis of why would MaintainX have a place in the market was, what happens if we put a stinking easy to use product together that anybody could pick up and figure out how to use. And we really made sure that it worked really well on mobile. It was smooth, it was beautiful. And then we allowed it to connect to those other systems. We're not, because we understand that people aren't going to go out and rip out an ERP system that's been in place. They already spent millions of dollars putting it in place. So the idea was to build something that could connect to those systems, as well as operate as a standalone system as well, for folks who either weren't that as sophisticated as some of those enterprise organizations, but still serve their needs as well. And so that's where we started. Was building a really easy to use mobile app and kind of building from there.
What's great about that, you mentioned the idea that these companies have these ERP systems and whatnot, other systems, myriad systems. And they, in a sense, get married to those because the investment is so big and it's connected to some of the things about the organization that are absolutely critical. Mission critical, we've been hearing that for years. Oh, your mission critical tasks,
Yeah.
day-to-day operations. But for you to have that ability to supplement that and basically say, we're not looking for you to tear out this big monstrous system that's such a part of the lifeblood of your organization. We're bringing something that's supplemental in nature that allows you to achieve maximum benefit with this add-on software that's running over here, but it keeps you all moving in that same direction. And something you mentioned, and we talked about it before, but you were talking about it now, is the deskless workforce. There's this sense that software decisions at an organization get made at an extremely high level. It's the C-suite, it's the board, it's dollars and cents, those types of things. Why should we do this? What's the impact if we don't? All those types of things. So they make these decisions based on what they see and what they like in their KPIs and the things that are extremely meaningful to the business. But that deskless workforce, it was almost like it was forgotten. And I think I'm kind of stealing from you and the way you described it, where without paying attention to that part of the workforce or your organization that's actually turning the wrenches, moving around on the plant floor, et cetera, to take care of things. So that's really the problem you were trying to solve. And then as a result of that, my question then would be, was the adoption, the early adoption, was it pretty evident in a short period of time how companies were benefiting from empowering those deskless workers?
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of complete the paint the picture, or to kind of complete that loop I was talking about earlier with, they print these work orders out to go perform their work. Well, more often than not, they don't go back and put that data in. So, some of the most valuable data that a company can be collecting around their operational cadence, around their asset management, the asset history, what's work's been performed, is a complete black box of information that is if at best collected in file cabinets and rarely looked at again. So to that question, what happens after folks, go through? Sorry, what happens when? What was that magic moment? So, that we started to see was we have people almost immediately coming and telling us, this was the app I've been looking for my whole career, or this is the app that I talked about starting with my buddy. This is, we had no idea how to build an app, but we knew that if there was ever an idea for an app, this was the place to do it, because it needed to be, we didn't reinvent the wheel, so to speak, with our initial version of our product. It was very much, let's just do it really well and really simple, so that, because if those end users can't use this product, then the rest of the value proposition is no different than what you see on the market today. And
Right.
you know, and for people who aren't in the technology world, building easy to use products is surprisingly hard. It requires a lot of discipline to really figure out what do we, it's really easy to say, let's add this, let's add this, let's add this. And it's it takes a really disciplined product guy to be able to kind of whittle it down to just those core functions to make it easy for everyone to be able to use. And then, we've built some clever ways to add additional functionality for folks that need it, but with making sure that we don't confuse those end users. So um, as soon as we saw people, as soon as people started to get that done, the value was suddenly, transparency. Beyond ROI numbers, which we do get to, um, just those sensations and those emotions of transparency of like knowing what people are doing, having visibility while you were away. And as COVID began to hit, some of those work from home policies were really unclear in the industrial worlds, because a lot of them were essential workers, but some people were maybe not essential workers, but they didn't have any visibility on the ground floor. And so our product gave them a window into their operations from a distance in a way that you gave them an advantage at that time that they didn't think was possible. So when you think about a lot of those factors, with just having that the ability to communicate and collaborate with people wherever they are in the field, the availability to start capturing some of that data and be able to adjust routes of what your technicians are doing on the fly while they're in the field, to be able to take a corrective action, to be able to create an alert for a corrective action that needs to take place after an inspection. Things that are relatively simple in the world of MaintainX. Those workflows are really complex in a world without MaintainX or a world before MaintainX. So now we know that we need to order a part to go fix this piece of because we were doing an inspection, and we now realize that if we don't get that part ordered today, it won't be ready in time by when we expect this part to fail. And some of those workflows may have previously been bottlenecks in the organization, and we're helping unlock that. So those are some of the immediate effects we started to see, even when our product was in its version 1, version 2, early days. And so it's been really exciting to kind of have that strong foundation to build on, and start to kind of put some more put a little bit more magic into that world for folks.
Yeah, I agree with that, because so for me, regardless of the technology, when you make an improvement to a processes, if you will, there's some risk, of course, and a lot of organizations really try to avoid that risk, because there's this thing, we've talked about it, where implementation is this big scary thing, and we're going to do all this and spend all of this time so that we can achieve this process change. There's risk in that, there's vulnerability in that. However, when a company connects with the right system and the right company behind it that's actually going to help you, guide you, and really care about what you're doing, like really make that part of it, what they will then see is these realized benefits initially. And what I'm moving towards here is, I'm thinking, when we look as an organization to make those changes, we look at a top-down approach.
Yeah.
But there's actually a major issue with that when it comes to change management, in my opinion. I don't know if I'm alone, maybe I'm not, where I think, have we really forgotten about the option of a bottom-up approach to actually shore things up instead of distribute things down? And I think when you empower that deskless part of the organization and workforce that's out there really getting it done, this way you roll that up, and that becomes way more meaningful at the C-suite and board level, because you're improving your metrics. You're going to discover new metrics that are better and stronger indicators. They're not going to be such lagging metrics. And then you mentioned also the transparency that starts to happen in both directions. And for people out there that might be concerned, wow, they just want to keep an eye on me, they're trying to babysit me, that's not at all what's happening. Although sometimes one of the most common concerns in the C-suite is, are people doing what they're supposed to be doing? But when you empower them, then not only are they doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're communicating that just by doing what they're doing. You don't have to be invasive, disruptive, or anything like that. And everybody starts moving in the same direction. So I think it's really important. So you have said, and this was on our recent conversation, you cannot improve what you are not measuring. And I wanted to ask you, why is that important to operations, and how does it relate to accountability?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the manufacturing world, but this one of the core tenets there, if you want to be, it is always around continuous improvement. You've got to be, there's always something you can optimize. And the challenge with continuous improvement managers around the country, around the industry, really is there are so many things that aren't being discretely measured that it's hard for them to, um, make improvements in certain areas where, that may not have an immediate effect on their overall output, which is what maybe they're most commonly measured on is how much are we producing per day, and and then obviously there's expenses that you can match against that as well to work on your as far as measurements go. But when it comes to knowing what change is going to make what impact, that becomes a lot more challenging if you're not measuring some of those day-to-day activities and you're not able to iterate on them. And one of the things that we've done that our customers really love is we have this concept of global procedure library that um, there's both an internal and an external library, where the internal library is the one that's private to your organization. And so if I'm a regional operations manager or the director of operations for 30 to 100 sites, I can actually go in and update the procedure that folks use every day on a certain piece of equipment or to perform a gimbal walk. If there's some sort of change I want to make, I can implement that and push it live to everybody same day. And previously, to go through some sort of a iterative change like that and be able to measure the impact on it would require a committee. It'd require months of emails and rollouts, and you'd have to then find out that 20 of the plants had Xeroxed the wrong copy of it, and so they were still using the old copy. And it's kind of chaotic to even think about making even minor changes like that. So you have so much more um, control and ability to make impact in measurable incremental ways with a tool like ours. And that's the direction that we all want to be going. Is how do we? That's what digital transformation empowers people at all levels of an organization to do their jobs in a better way. So beyond those frontline teams understanding how to do their job, knowing what needs to get done, you give the management the ability to actually implement their ideas and measure them against previous periods as well. So that's what's really kind of exciting about this the state of where we're headed with this product today, and the power that it gives people at all levels of the organization. And that's what people want, is they want to be able to make impact when they go to work. They want to know that I'm not going in and checking a box, and who knows if I did anything better or worse today. It's really hard to measure against that, in sort of this old school way of doing things. And when you think about this generational shift that we're having in the industry, millennials want that empowerment. They like to be measured. They wear Apple Watches to track their steps and know, am I moving around every day? And they want to have that autonomy to make decisions. And you mentioned, like, this bottoms up versus top down approach of making decisions in an organization. And to the management's credit, in a lot of these larger organizations today, they're giving those local site plant managers and those folks a little bit more autonomy to make some decisions than they used to historically. So we're seeing people, we're kind of seeing this motion where we get customers coming in from both directions, from the top down and the bottom up. But more often than not these days, it's from the bottom up of that aspirational plant manager or even maintenance manager that says, hey, there's got to be an app for this. There's got to be some way to do this, whatever workflow that I'm trying to solve, better, because I'm currently doing it in Excel and it's driving me nuts. Or we're doing it in SharePoint, or we're doing it in in some SAP system module that's been hasn't been updated in 10 years, and now they're going out and empowering themselves and empowering their organization to kind of set something like this up on their own, and that's creating basically an entry point and a pilot for us with some of our larger clients, where they started with a small site because they had a forward-thinking manager who really just wanted to see if they could tackle an issue, and then that that the results speak for themselves, and next thing you know, the higher ups start to notice, and just help steer that change across an organization. So there's a lot of it. The psychology of these generational kind of collisions that are happening along with this digital transformation movement right now make this such a dynamic and exciting space to be a part of, because um, we saw so many of these changes happen 20 years ago in the white collar workforce, with people bringing in Salesforce for the first time, and bringing in, you talk about Slack and some of these other great workflow tools that helped people who sit behind a desk do their job better every day. But um, now is really the magic moment in time for the rest of the 80% of the deskless workforce that hasn't had that digital transformation moment. We're finally getting to empower them, and we're humbled by how grateful they are, because we have customers who are effusively thankful to us. They talk about how much this has helped them every day, whether it's something as simple as, I used to miss my kids' soccer games every Saturday because I'd have to come into the plant, reconcile paperwork. I get to go and spend more time with my family, or spend more time fishing. Um, you know, Beyond the organizational impacts that we're having with greater efficiencies, less downtime, better OEE, the individual personal, um, you know, and what's the goals, or the deliverables that we're helping get people, the value that we're driving for people is also really, makes it very fulfilling to kind of keep working on this mission right now.
Yeah, I love that. I love the example you brought up
Yeah,
where you're actually talking about something that is seemingly intangible or unmeaningful to an organization. But when you talk about the currency within your organization, some of which being human currency, and I'm not sure if I love that term, but what I'm saying is your people matter.
yeah,
And if your clients are able to not just benefit within their organization from having this solution and people leveraging this solution and leveraging it more and more and more, what they're getting is additional benefit. That's why I call it intangible. Getting home on time for dinner, being able to go to your kid's soccer game, or being able to take that PTO, knowing knowing that while I'm on PTO, if something comes up, I'm going to get it, right here on my phone, and I can stay involved because I'm out for 2 days, but my 5 other team members are on site. So I can still be involved, but my wife and my kids, they're not going to mind if, dad, or if it's the other way around, mom's over here for 20 minutes just taking care of some business, but you can still go back to your trip, your vacation, whatever it might be. And I think those are important factors. They're really difficult to measure. It's hard to measure what that impact is, but I guarantee that it matters, because
yeah,
one of the things you also talked about reminds me to back in the early 2000s when implementing a platform at a company, the maintenance team was super resistant to using a system because they were used to that kind of old school methodology. Tell me what to
yeah,
do and it is going to get done. And I think that's phenomenal. However, when we need the data and we need to see it. So what happened was we did this implementation, worked with the team separately, and we got a call 2 weeks later saying something similar to what you were talking about. They're like, we don't know how we were doing this. And you mentioned the generational shifts and some of the other kind of paradigm shifts that we're really seeing right now in the world, in business. The the willingness of the up and coming generation and their preference for self-serving and being able to move forward is really really powerful. So if you're a solution that kind of understands and embraces that, where you're not forcing things on people but you're empowering people, they'll take that information and they'll do things with it that maybe someone like me, I understand it, that's why I do it, but for them it's second nature
yeah,
to kind of self-serve. And it's my understanding that your platform in particular is set up in a way that empowers people to kind of get through it without having to lean in so hard on things like support, customer support, service, training. They can kind of actually get off and running with very little of that. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we think it's important that don't just trust our sales material or our salespeople. Don't trust our marketing material on its at face value. If you don't want to, go in and play with the actual real deal product, set it up, use it yourself, and see if we back up our claims with the actual product experience yourself. And that's why we're really big on having that free trial period where anybody can go in and see the whole, get all the bells and whistles, and kind of see it for themselves. And and yeah, to your point, like there are a lot of organizations that we work with every day that don't have a single interest, don't have any interest in talking to us, and don't need to talk to us because they get up and running. It's easy enough to figure out that they run. And now we have phenomenal support, award-winning support that sits, that's available and happy to help. So we do take it really seriously. And from an implementation standpoint, there's some larger organizations that just don't have the ability to fully self-drive, and that's where our implementation team, which is also, won all sorts of customer-driven awards that are related to efficiency, from fastest implementation to best implementation or most implementable, as G2 calls it, where those reviews stem from us being really having a really tight process that we've done enough laps with enough different types of organizations that as soon as we have some of those conversations, we can help get even really complex systems integrated with MaintainX in a really short period of time. And that's what that was something that we found out really early on was going to be critical to our success, because the last thing anybody wants to do is commit to something that they may or may not be able to use within 1 or 2 years of a bunch of people in the back rooms mapping out stuff and spending endless hours and resources and time building out it. And we wanted to make something that could drive instant value for our clients, and so that they could immediately, as soon as they go from decision to yes, we're buying this, that a month later they're immediately seeing the benefits of it. And that's something that is sadly not too common in this industry. So to our benefit, it's something we can play up and say, hey, you're not only going to get what you see here. Um, you know, it's not only going to work like we say it's going to work, but you're going to get that faster than you're going to get, any value from any other product, in the same window of time. Um, and so it's a credit to some really thoughtful people in our organization that have spent a lot of time trying to say, it's not about cutting corners. It's just about being efficient and knowing, what are some of those, um, beginning quick wins that we can help you start to achieve right out of the gate, and what are those core problems that we're trying to help you solve, to start, and then understanding that you can build on that. You don't have to go in and renovate all of your processes across every division and function on day one. You can start with just resetting your PMs, getting those in order, and then next thing you know, you're adding and layering on top of that, and so that way it makes it manageable. Because with the labor shortage being what it is, these folks don't have a plethora of people they can pull on. They still got to go do their day jobs, quote unquote, of actually performing the work. So
Mm-hmm.
we know that they don't have the luxury of time to spend endless amounts of hours, setting up a new system. It's just not good. If that was the case, we wouldn't make it. We would have very few customers, because that is just a luxury that most companies don't have these days.
Of course, and I
Yeah.
like, so I like that you're not only focused on that, but that you have that awareness, because that's what's really going to make the difference. At the end of the day, I've said it for years. I'll say it forever. Your clients are what matter, because without them, you don't generate the revenue to employ the people to deliver the great solution that they need. Right? You can build your solutions and they could be great, and you can just sit around and use them yourself. I don't see how that could be productive. And people they want to get to work. They don't want to stop. They don't want to sit around, really. They want to get things done. So this adds a lot of efficiency. Now, a couple other things. You and I talked a little bit about ROI, and people do really need to see and understand what the ROI is. And I think what we were talking about is the biggest impact from an ROI perspective seems to be in manufacturing, although it applies to just about any other kind of situation. I'd like to ask you, where's the ROI in a non-manufacturing centric environment. I know there are multiple answers, so I'm not expecting you to be right. I'm expecting you to just kind of share with me one or two things that you see in a non-manufacturing centric environment
Yeah.
where there's immense ROI available for those organizations to implement a CMMS platform.
Yeah. Efficiency is sort of one of those first easy ones that, comes to mind when you're thinking about whether it's a hotel property or it's some facilities management use case, or it's restaurants, folks like that. It's, do we have enough headcount? How are our technicians that we currently employ spending their time working? What are they working on? Is that the most valuable thing for them to work on? Is maybe it's if I'm a McDonald's franchise location and our drive-through you know ordering system is down, that's pretty critical to helping them make sales on their drive-through orders, right? And maybe there's a guy that's busy fixing some piece of equipment that's less critical, on that property or somewhere else. Um, to be able to have to be able to quickly context shift that, and reallocate that resource to the urgent need that it's at, and have him know where he can go get his parts, the spare parts he needs to fix that in a timely fashion, is one of those ways where you can get a quick ROI win right out of the gate, just by making sure that drive-through window gets back open at the McDonald's, or making sure that your customer satisfaction ratings at your hotel are higher because the AC is not going out in the dead heat of summer in Phoenix. So there's a lot of incremental ways that you can on the efficiency side, and then just from an asset management standpoint, if you're not taking care of your equipment, it's going to break down more often. That's fairly common knowledge, right? But in practice, how do you actually measure that? Some of these organizations that are not manufacturing driven don't necessarily have those muscles built up to keep have awareness for that, right? So we make it really easy for them to say, hey, let's start making sure that you're doing the PMs on those HVAC machines, because they're not cheap to replace. And if we can help you extend the lifespan of that machine from 12 years to 17, that's 25 grand you don't have to spend for an extra 5 years. Or so it's around asset life cycle, being able to help keep that equipment working longer, um, and helping them make better capital planning decisions. Those sort of things are really valuable to some of those those clients who aren't necessarily manufacturing driven. Um, and those are some of the quick wins that we see from those folks. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think those are really good examples, and it's almost like, for me, it feels like we're saying, not to put words in your mouth, but it feels like this concept of, well, everything you do, if it's facility maintenance centric, can be treated like a manufacturing environment in some way, shape, or form, and you're going to get a really heavy benefit, a big improvement if assets are cared for more regularly, and also being able to, on top of all this, collect all the data about these events to make those process improvements, because we can make process improvements everywhere, but we can't just make them based on a guess. We have to make those decisions based on indicators,
Yeah.
lagging or otherwise. So the next thing I want to ask you about, and again, kind of open-ended question,
Yeah.
but what do you see as the biggest change or trend, if you will, in CMMS in the coming months? Like, let's say within the next 12 to 24 months, is there anything that you see on the horizon, things we should be paying attention to, what's going to happen with technology, anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think from a societal standpoint, I think we need to see a greater sense of urgency of companies that haven't yet made these digital transformations really start to accelerate into them, because um, I think there are some companies out there who have maybe convinced themselves they've already kind of checked that box, that they are staying competitive and that they are upgrading because they've now added sensors, and the sensors connect to their email addresses and send them alerts. Um, and there's a lot of folks in the industry that are going to be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years, and we need to start preparing to create knowledge bases internally and build these systems up so that they can pass the torch effectively to that next generation to run these operations and systems. There's a lot of mission critical assets and operations around the world that we rely on every day and take for granted. Just turn on the light switch, to flip it on the faucet, and those systems oftentimes are still being run in a surprisingly old-fashioned way. So I think there's going to be a sense of urgency on that sort of generational shift to start making sure that we can prepare organizations across the board for to be successful as they pass that torch. And then for like a product side, we're going to see some really exciting things. I think with as we get more data and as we get more folks participating in this ecosystem, we're going to be able to do more interesting things with artificial intelligence or predictive maintenance that previously would have been a challenge because all of those systems are driven by data. That's all they are. They're for lack to really boil it down to a very simple system. They're fancy statistical outputs with some a little bit of clever algorithms that help kind of bring some extra context to those outputs. But and this isn't the type of AI that you see in the movies where robots are taking jobs. This is the AI that helps people be more intelligent with how they spend their time, whether that means understanding that, hey, this piece of equipment right here historically has breaks after or if you don't do a preventive maintenance routine on this piece of equipment after 5,600 runtime hours, there is a 80% chance it's going to fail within the next 200 runtime hours, and a near 100% chance it's going to fail if it's within the following 500 runtime hours. So, we have enough data now to suggest that this is a mission critical piece of equipment. Yes, it's been running a long time, but you need to go in and perform this maintenance. Otherwise, we have a high confidence you're going to fail. And so there's some, predictive analytics that you're going to start to see more of that in products, and that's going to be really exciting. And maybe helping like with, folks understanding what their inputs mean. So maybe I punch in a meter reading or I see a meter reading that's automatically, connected to our system. If I'm a relatively new technician, I may not have the reps or the at bats to know that that's something that should be alarming to me. However, we're hopefully start to see some of our these systems start to give you those types of alerts so that we can surface those warnings or that information to people who have the ability to act on it, but maybe just not the experience to know that they should act on it or know what to do when they get information. So, hopefully that's the direction and trend. I think we're going to start to see these systems become a little bit smarter, all about empowering that end user, that frontline worker to do his or her job better and make it easier and not have to worry about making as many mistakes, being able to have that information to do their job effectively and do it right the first time. Less oops moments. That's kind of what I think we're going to see. The system start to trend closer towards over the next couple of years.
I like what you said about the AI and the idea behind someone who's new to a role, less experienced. They haven't had those reps. Their muscles in that realm haven't quite developed to where they really could be. Getting a lift, but in a meaningful way, such that they start to develop rather quickly the context of why this reading means I should be going to do this. And I think that's going to be really helpful because knowledge and information presented in the right way becomes highly effective in your actions.
Yeah.
And that's really, it's what should we do as opposed to let's just do things. There's a big difference. And I think AI is going to help with that as well. And I think a lot of people, I like how you talked about, it's not like the machines are taking over or anything like that. It's not to eliminate the human element. It's actually to enhance and really kind of improve, amplify the human element.
That's and make it safer to go to work. There are so many mistakes that happen across the workforce every single day around the world that if we have the ability to help people do their job safer, there's a reason we have OSHA and there's a reason we have some of these systems and processes, and that's just tribal knowledge trying to say, hey, if we follow these principles, we're less likely to get hurt while we're doing our jobs. And if we can apply that same sort of tribal knowledge to some of this equipment maintenance or some of these signals, to help people say, hey, if you go and do XYZ steps to this piece of equipment, before this this vibration meter gets out of hand, there's a better chance that you're all going to walk home today with all of your limbs, or you're not going to be at risk of getting hurt because this equipment's going to get out of hand and go haywire on you. So there's a lot of benefits to, from a safety standpoint. Again, that's something that's a weird ROI space. It's like, how do you quantify the ROI of safety? But it's important to us that our system helps empower and enable that.
Well, and maybe, for anybody out there, maybe that's something AI needs to help us out with, to figure out how do we attach some of these things to outcomes that are more indicators from a revenue perspective, because that tends to be what is meaningful at the top, and everything else gets rolled up in that way. And that might be another way that it can help. So now, just want to ask you a couple of kind of fun questions just about you. Only a couple of them, no surprises, but do you have a favorite hobby that people would be interested in knowing that you're into?
Oh, good question. Well, I don't know, when I was a kid, one of the superpowers I wanted was to fly. I haven't figured that out yet, but I did get really into drones as a result of that. And so one of my favorite things to do is just fly my drone around and get a perspective from above. It's really peaceful and calming to me, and it also creates some cool footage. So whenever I travel, that's something I like to bring with me if it's allowed. There's a lot of rules around it, but I try to be careful to follow those. But we've also done, when I go to customer sites, if they're okay with it, we've done some customer case studies where videos that are on our website where you'll actually see there's drone footage that kind of is the B-roll footage, as they say in the film industry, where you'll see a lot of our videos start with some sort of aerial shot above, and that's usually me just intertwining work and play a little bit, bringing my drone up and taking some fun shots of their operations from above and helping make the video a little more exciting.
That sounds like it'd be fun to do, but it also sounds like it would be fun to watch. So if somebody wanted to check something out about that and see one or two of those where you have that happening on the front end or throughout a video, where would they go to find that if they wanted to see that about some MaintainX customer sites?
We've got a YouTube channel. Just type in MaintainX on YouTube. You can find it there, as well as on our website. There's a little resources tab, case studies. You can find it there too. So we've got some fun videos we put together, and hopefully we'll have some more good ones coming soon.
Now, at this point, I'd like to know how people can get in touch with you or connect with you if they want to talk about these types of things, if they want to learn more about MaintainX, etc. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, come find me on LinkedIn, Nick Haase, and I'm pretty responsive there. You can also find me on Twitter, and I'll go to our website, www.maintainx.com, learn more about the product, and you can also reach out to any of our team members. We have a pretty high bar with who we bring on the team, so I have a lot of confidence that no matter who you talk to, if you don't talk directly to me, you're going to have a great conversation, and hopefully they'll leave a good impression on you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to say this has left a great impression on me. I've really enjoyed our time today. I appreciate you making the time to come on CMMS Radio, talk about some of your background, the origin story, and I hope you enjoy these football games this weekend. But thank you so much for your time today. I really had a lot of fun doing this.
I had a blast too, Greg. Thanks so much for having me. It's an absolute privilege. Appreciate it.
You got it. My pleasure. Take care, Nick, and thanks for spending the time with us.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
You too. Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question, and follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project, and keep listening to CMMS Radio. Do you have a CMMS story? We'd love to hear it. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.